Good morning. I'm John Hanson. I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union. I'm a sixth-generation family farmer from Madison County. I also serve as the chairman of the National Farmers Union's Legislative Committee. This is a contentious issue. There's lots of different points of view for lots of good reasons. But I want to back up and remind folks that the development of policy on this issue started with the outbreak of a substantial number of outbreaks in other countries. And so as those countries were confronting BSE issues and the adverse economic impact that was having on livestock producers in those countries, there was a tremendous amount of interest in this country on what it is that we need to do to get ahead of, instead of being behind the eight ball on that issue. And so as we discussed this with livestock producers in other countries, in Japan and France and England, we heard horror stories about the adverse economic impacts that major BSE outbreaks had in those countries. And the reason is that at that point, then the livestock disease policy was overrun by the food safety policy. And at that point, if you didn't have a viable program and policy in place, then producers were absolutely incapable of having any real input into the situation. So then you had the two worst case scenarios. That was just the facts. You had the adverse economic impact that it had on producers, and then two, you had producers absolutely unable whatsoever to have any input into what the system ought to be. And so based on that, we thought the more reasonable and practical, proactive thing to do was to develop and advance a policy. We participated as well as a lot of other stakeholders in a USDA listening session of strategic partners on how to develop a UMass system based on our needs and our interests and our concerns, many of which have been surfaced here today. And as we developed that consensus and that strategic listening group made those recommendations, unfortunately, USDA then chose to not use those principles as they went forward. But that approach did enjoy the support of the National Farmers Union, the Farm Bureau, a whole host of diverse groups. And so when USDA decided to scrap that kind of consensus approach and then go down the road that it has gone down, then unfortunately, in our view, tragically, there has been nothing but opposition to the particular approach that USDA has used. And so as we look at where we're at right now, how do you unring the bell? How do you make a new first impression? How do you get back to the point where you're having an intelligent discussion ahead of the crisis? Well, what I know is that the day that we do not have a reasonable and legitimate policy in place, when a major outbreak occurs, that is going to be the start of lots of really bad days, and I suffer no illusions about who's going to take the economic brunt of the fallout of that failure to have a policy in place. It will not be the packers, friends and neighbors, it will be the producers. And so it behooves all of us to work together, develop a consensus. I want to thank Senator Joe Hanson, Secretary Bill Sack. I would hope there would be some deep breathing. I hope that we have, if possible, a do-over, and we begin to have a timeout if we can and try to come together with new consensus. But this problem is not going to go away, and we cannot ignore it. It is one we must come together and develop as producers, or we will be at the short end of the stick. Thank you.